In this video we share the prophecy of Father Joseph Ratzinger on the future of the Church. A restructured church with far fewer members that is forced to let go of many places of worship it worked so hard to build over the centuries. A minority Catholic church with little influence over political decisions, that is socially irrelevant, left humiliated and forced to start over. But a church that will find itself again and be reborn, a simpler and more spiritual entity thanks to this enormous confusion. This was the prophesy made 54 years ago on the future of Christianity by a young Bavarian theologian, Joseph Ratzinger. In 5 little-known radio speeches made in 1969 and published again a while ago by Ignatius Press in the volume Faith and the Future Pope gave his vision of the future of man and the Church. His last teaching, which he read out on Hessian Rundfunk radio on Christmas Day, had a distinctly prophetic tone. Here are his concluding remarks. The future of the Church can and will issue from those whose roots are deep and who live from the pure fullness of their faith. It will not issue from those who accommodate themselves merely to the passing moment or from those who merely criticize others and assume that they themselves are infallible measuring rods, nor will it issue from those who take the easier road, who sidestep the passion of faith, declaring false and obsolete, tyrannous and legalistic, all that makes demands upon men, that hurts them and compels them to sacrifice themselves. To put this more positively, the future of the Church, once again as always, will be reshaped by saints, by men, that is, whose minds probe deeper than the slogans of the day, who see more than others see, because their lives embrace a wider reality. Unselfishness, which makes men free, is attained only through the patience of small daily acts of self-denial. By this daily passion, which alone reveals to a man in how many ways he is enslaved by his own ego, by this daily passion and by it alone, a man's eyes are slowly opened. He sees only to the extent that he has lived and suffered. If today we are scarcely able any longer to become aware of God, that is because we find it so easy to evade ourselves, to flee from the depths of our being by means of the narcotic of some pleasure or other. Thus our own interior depths remain closed to us. If it is true that a man can see only with his heart, then how blind we are. How does all this affect the problem we are examining? It means that the big talk of those who prophesy a church without God and without faith is all empty chatter. We have no need of a church that celebrates the cult of action in political prayers. It is utterly superfluous. Therefore, it will destroy itself. What will remain is the Church of Jesus Christ, the Church that believes in the God who has become man and promises us life beyond death. The kind of priest who is no more than a social worker can be replaced by the psychotherapist and other specialists, but the priest who is no specialist, who does not stand on the sidelines, watching the game, giving official advice, but in the name of God places himself at the disposal of man, who is beside them in their sorrows, in their joys, in their hope and in their fear, such a priest will certainly be needed in the future. Let us go a step farther. From the crisis of today the Church of tomorrow will emerge, a church that has lost much. She will become small and will have to start afresh more or less from the beginning. She will no longer be able to inhabit many of the edifices she built in prosperity. As the number of her adherents diminishes, so it will lose many of her social privileges. In contrast to an earlier age, it will be seen much more as a voluntary society, entered only by free decision. As a small society, it will make much bigger demands on the initiative of her individual members. Undoubtedly it will discover new forms of ministry and will ordain to the priesthood approved Christians who pursue some profession. In many smaller congregations or in self-contained social groups, pastoral care will normally be provided in this fashion. Alongside this, the full-time ministry of the priesthood will be indispensable as formerly. But in all of the changes at which one might guess, the Church will find her essence afresh and with full conviction in that which was always at her center, faith in the triune God, in Jesus Christ, the Son of God made man, in the presence of the Spirit until the end of the world. In faith and prayer she will again recognize the sacraments as the worship of God and not as a subject for liturgical scholarship. The Church will be a more spiritual church, not presuming upon a political mandate, flirting as little with the left as with the right. It will be hard going for the Church, for the process of crystallization and clarification will cost her much valuable energy. It will make her poor and cause her to become the Church of the meek. The process will be all the more arduous, for sectarian narrow-mindedness as well as pompous self-will will have to be shed. One may predict that all of this will take time. The process will be long and wearisome, as was the road from the false progressivism on the eve of the French Revolution, when a bishop might be thought smart if he made fun of dogmas and even insinuated that the existence of God was by no means certain, to the renewal of the 19th century. But when the trial of this sifting is past, a great power will flow from a more spiritualized and simplified church. Men in a totally planned world will find themselves unspeakably lonely. If they have completely lost sight of God, they will feel the whole horror of their poverty. Then they will discover the little flock of believers as something wholly new. They will discover it as a hope that is meant for them, an answer for which they have always been searching in secret. And so it seems certain to me that the Church is facing very hard times. The real crisis has scarcely begun. We will have to count on terrific upheavals. But I am equally certain about what will remain at the end, not the Church of the political cult, which is dead already, but the Church of faith. It may well no longer be the dominant social power to the extent that she was until recently, but it will enjoy a fresh blossoming, and be seen as man's home, where he will find life and hope beyond death. The Catholic Church will survive in spite of men and women, not necessarily because of them. And yet, we still have our part to do. We must pray for and cultivate unselfishness, self-denial, faithfulness, sacramental devotion and a life centered on Christ. The process outlined by Ratzinger was a long one, but when all the suffering is past, a great power will emerge from a more spiritual and simple church, at which point humans will realize that they live in a world of indescribable solitude, and having lost sight of God they will perceive the horror of their poverty. Then and only then, Father Ratzinger concluded, will they see that small flock of faithful as something completely new. They will see it as a source of hope for themselves, the answer they had always secretly been searching for. Please support my channel by viewing another video. May God bless you and keep you. Our Lady, Queen of Peace, pray for us.